How are you? Yeah.
Radio Free Intimate episode 372. Back at ya again with some more of that sugary sweet Gothenburg crap.
You don't know the power of the guitar harmonies.
Because, frankly, I like that stuff. I think it's rather underappreciated nowadays. I can remember back when I was first getting into metal, I was at the tail end of people really complaining about the Gothenburg stuff. Right around the same time, people were still whining about Norsecore, before the real bad metal showed up.
Oh my God!
People did not know how good they had it. And I think you can apply that sentiment to In Flames, too. Because there's a reason we're doing a three-parter on these guys. We hit up your Lunar Strains. We got your Subterranean action. Got some Jester Race. A little Horacle in the mix. They still got two great albums after that. And that's what this episode's going to be about. Now, In Flames, tail end of the 90s, was kind of in a sticky spot. Because after they put out Horacle, one of their best albums ever, Jesper Stromblad, the main In Flames guy, his co-guitarist since the beginning, Glenn Ljungström, leaves. These last two Good In Flames albums, they are different than Jester Race and Horacle, but they're still fantastic. And a big part of that was they had another co-guitarist ready to go. Good old Bjorn Jalotte, who previously had been In Flames' drummer for the past two albums. Now they got a vacant drum seat. They bring in an outstanding choice. Daniel Svensson from the almighty Sacrilege that I covered, something like 6 years ago on episode 29, which probably stinks, by the way. It was a real early one. I wouldn't watch it. Sacrilege was dank as hell, though. Honestly, out of all the early melodic death metal bands, I would say Sacrilege kind of came closest to capturing a similar spiritual energy as early In Flames. But when Daniel joined In Flames, he didn't really bring his Sacrilege-style drumming. Sacrilege was generally a much darker sort of take on that sound. Instead, he opted for a real high-energy, almost punk at times performance. But we'll get to that once we finally start listening to the albums. Speaking of which, the first of this era of In Flames, 1999's Colony. Now, when it comes to Colony, I regret to inform you I'm not going to have any wacky hot takes. My assessment of this album really isn't going to differ that much from the legions of Colony fans already extant, in that, yeah, the whole album's pretty fantastic, and my favorite songs are probably most people's favorite songs. For starters, that opener, Embody the Invisible, kicks in with an absolute destroyer, a world's riff. I mean, come on. If you're a metalhead coming up in the late 90s, the early 2000s, you know the Embody the Invisible riff. And here you can see how the change in drummer really did kind of shift the energy with this band. It gets a lot bouncier, a lot poppier, a little bit more punk. Although, as you're hearing now, they still got these twisting, turning, churning kind of harmonies going on. It's still recognizably In Flames, just with a little bit less esotericism and a lot more pep in its step. The production is arguably heavier and certainly more modern sounding, to the point where at times the harmonies are obscured during the palm-muted sections. But when they get to the real raging parts like this, that real Hives-style drum beat gives the sound a lot of explosivity. It makes sense that this song in particular was included on the soundtrack to a Tony Hawk game. And then we get into the as always sick Jesper Stromblad soloing. Jesper actually wrote most of this album himself, which is probably a big part why it kicks so much ass and fits in so well with the rest of the In Flames discography. Bjorn wasn't really credited as a co-composer on every song until Clayman came out. And goddamn, this part right here where they go back into that main riff, but they're doing it with the harmonized guitar solos underneath that churning bed of almost pop-punk hard rock riffs. That's fucking cool shit. As is the section coming out of the solo right here, doing this weird shit with the mixture of natural harmonics and guitar harmonies. Then they do this weird thing right here. Check it out. Little Hammond organ action. They'd really started messing around with keyboards on Horacle, and that continues on this release, but never to the detriment of the guitar parts. It's always just there to supplement, which is how it should be for In Flames. They are a guitar-oriented band. They are the guitar-oriented band. Like, in terms of being about the riffs, bruh, these guys are up there with Argus Lent and Slough-Feg, honestly. I mean, yeah, the other stuff does matter. Already talked about the new drumming approach. Lyrically, they've changed up a little bit as well. Way back on Lunar Strain, you had Mikhail Stana spinning his weird tales of astronomy, dark fantasy, and existentialism. Then on Jester Race and Horacle, you had Niklas Sundin from Dark Tranquility writing some of the best lyrics ever, kind of giving voice to concepts put forward by vocalist Anders Frieden. On Colony, it's pretty much all Anders lyrics. Like, he still worked with Niklas to kind of clean up the English on them, but it's basically his concepts. They're not as mystical as Niklas's approach, but they're not bad. Sort of a blending of some pagan themes, general spirituality, and intrapersonal drama. Like, you got this one line on the song Resin. That's literally almost a direct quotation from the Prose Edda, okay? That's the homeboy Snorri Sturluson we're talking about here. But it's generally all about the guitars, and that is best shown off by my personal favorite song on the album. A lot of people's personal favorite song on the album, Zombie Inc., slap dab in the middle of the album. Another one that starts out with a real big harmonized riff right at the beginning of the song, which then picks up in intensity when it starts bringing that real strong Daniel Svensson drumming. Then you get to the chugging verses, showing off that new implementation of keyboards in concert with the guitar. You know, it ain't Children of Bodom. The keyboards aren't a lead instrument by any means, but they add a lot of nice texture to the music. Churning kind of pre-chorus, very explosive sounding. And you'd have a pretty good, simple kind of verse-chorus structure going on between this section and that chugging part. But then they hit you with the climax of the song, where everything gets turned upside down. First off, you got these real nasty vocals from Anders right here. But then they hit you with this, like, fade-out section into the clean guitars. One of them doing this, like, jangly, almost John Frusciante sounding thing. The other one leaning hard into that Swedish folk music feeling. This shit blew my mind when I heard it. I mean, I was very young, but it continues to stick with me to this day. Pretty sure if I heard the song newly for the first time, I'd still love it. I mean, you're hearing these fucking harmonies right here? That's some sexy shit. And it's all building up to when they bring those distorted guitars back in with one of the biggest fucking turnaround solos of all time. This shit is, orgasmic.
I can't stop coming.
Like, I don't know what kind of miserable cynic you gotta be to not enjoy the lead guitar part in Zombie Inc. Everybody knows that lead guitar part. And if you don't, now you do. It'll get you through some tough times in life. It's done that for me. And from there, we get to, out of all the In Flames albums, I claim are the good In Flames albums. This one's probably the most controversial. 2000's Clayman. Now, if you want more of a elitist endorsement of this album, I remember way back in the day reading the Relapse mail order catalog on the shitter, going back through the list of bands at the end, list of CDs you can order. There was one in there called Job for a Cowboy. I'm just looking at that back then. I was like,
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
that was a bad omen for where metal was going, let me tell you. But they had a copy of Clayman you could buy, and right next to it, they wrote, The Last Good In Flames album. Now, I can't think of a group of people more opposed to poppy melodic death metal a la In Flames than late 90s, early 2000s Relapse. Even they put respect on this album's name. And out of all the purely melodic death metal sounding In Flames albums, it's definitely the poppiest, the most mainstream music adjacent, particularly during the big songs that everybody remembers from this album. Stuff like Pinball Map. Got this main riff that's dumb as hell, but it's so fucking catchy as you're hearing right now. Well constructed. Then the verses, very chuggy, almost dangerously close to jump the fuck up territory. Not quite nu metal. And they bring the harmonies back in for the pre-chorus. So don't worry. Also, you can hear there's way more keyboards on this album. Got a big old Daniel Svensson drum solo into the chorus. Way more clean sing-along type stuff than In Flames had ever done prior to this album. But honestly, it still works with the melodic guitars. But in the midsection of this song, they bring back a little bit of that old school wackiness with this chugging, very elastic sounding riff. You got Anders' vocals getting a lot more dirty sounding to meet that new intensity coming in from the guitar part. Then they get weird with the second set of chugs here, almost harkening back to that mid-paced part in the middle of Behind Space, that kind of evil polka thing making a resurgence. And of course, it's In Flames. The solo's amazing, kind of harkening back to the melody from the chorus, then back into, the meat of the song. Verses and choruses, not super structurally complex, but they still have wacky twists and turns here and there. Keep things interesting. Plus, brother, how you gonna fucking hate on... I mean, that's just a solid fucking riff. Don't know why anybody would dislike that.
Go to the ear, nose, and throat department. Get your hearing checked.
Another big kind of pop melodic death metal standout absolutely has to be Only for the Weak. I mean, even in this benighted modern era of In Flames, they still bust this one out live. Got another big ass riff to start the song out with. This riff will reappear during the chorus. Also nice incorporation of keyboards. And I like this transition section here, kind of easing you into the song's verses with this chugging build-up section. Those verses got more clean vocals from Anders. Some people might not be into these. I actually still think he sounds okay. He's got a cool voice. Then you get this nice little variant of those intro chugs coming back with a different sort of harmonic resolution. Then they ease you into the big melodic chorus with this very nicely done melodic harmonized guitar section. And then it fucking slaps you in the face. The big ass chorus.
Oh yeah, baby, like a big ass cigar, right?
Vocals are pretty weird. Kind of this doubling up of death growls with an overdubbed narration track. This album was kind of the start of Anders doing some really weird shit like that. But then you get the guitar solos. It's fucking In Flames. It's always good. They're real good at kind of like weaving a narrative to their solos. Like this one right here, this is clearly some kind of dramatic climax. And man, yeah, it's gonna be fucking dramatic, but then whatever the fuck this is, I guess we just decided to turn into Kraftwerk for a bit. But yeah, then the guitars come back. That is a big thing with this album though, this incorporation of electronic elements. I feel like these style of songs were a massive influence on Japanese bands like Bloodstained Child that kind of blended electronic music and melodic death metal, specifically thinking of their third, fourth, and fifth albums in particular. In fact, on episode 174 of Radio Free Innsmouth about Bloodstained Child, I did some pretty in-depth analysis of another one of the more poppy electronic songs from the Clayman album, that being Bullet Ride. I won't go through all that again, but to summarize, sometimes that song sounds like this. But then other times, that same part goes a little more like... utilizing some drum machine for a bit of a dramatic contrast. This album's full of stuff like that, real poppy but simultaneously very adventurous sounding electronic music inflected melodic death metal. But it's also kind of got a horrible thing going on, where when you dig further into the album past the big hit singles, you actually get some really weird and much more complex sounding songs. The best examples of this are the songs Square Nothing and my personal favorite song on the album, Swim, which is like one of the best In Flames songs ever, and I don't really hear people talk about it too much when they talk about the big popular In Flames songs. It's got another big-ass harmonized intro lead bit, but then they go into outer space with this next part. I ain't ever heard In Flames do a guitar melody quite like this before. Just real weird spacey shit. It's fucking awesome. Kind of bouncing around. It's played with guitars, but it almost has an electronic sounding feel to it. And I think they might be bolstering the guitar sound with keyboards. Don't quote me on that. Then you got this harmonized chug part right here. Really fucking cool vocals from Anders going on over the top of it. This part kicks ass, and you know they gotta jump back into those awesome fucking harmonies that open the song up. You can't let a part like that go to waste. It's just a solid fucking riff. Definitely in the upper echelon of the storied catalog of In Flames guitar harmonies. But then, this part happens with the fucking wah pedal and shit. I actually first heard this on the Live in Tokyo album before I even got into Clayman. It blew my mind back then, and it blows my mind even more in studio form. Then there's this heavy part with Anders again doing that weird thing with the overdub of clean vocals and growls. It really works here. It just sounds fucking bestial. And it all leads into another awesome In Flames harmonized guitar solo section. This one not so much about shredding, more just about really well done, catchy melodies that kind of become lead riffs in their own right, as opposed to like break for shredding, shred, and then go back to the music. This wah part is so fucking awesome. Like, Jesus, dude, why don't people talk about this song more? This song fucking kicks ass. Best song on the album. And it's a very good album. But it's also the last good In Flames album. I'm not gonna pretend that maybe a couple of the albums after this didn't have some cool parts, but when you get to like Reroute to Remain and going forward, you know, for every cool sounding part in a song, you're gonna get hit with a and in all likelihood, even some of that like, Jesus, dude, what the fuck is that?
This commercialized fucking trendy music that I can't fucking stand, right?
Yeah, no fucking thanks. But it gets worse than that, because you'd think you'd be able to enjoy some later In Flames albums, you know, if you got your finger on the skip button. But then they start doing stuff where there'll be something cool going on while there's something shitty happening at the same time. Like, you get stuff like this. The riffs underneath are cool. It sounds like the third At the Gates album. But then the vocals are just fucking terrible. And that goes double for, you got these cool harmonized guitar parts, but what the fuck are these, like, I don't know, metalcore, new metal, whatever the fuck style vocals? Whiny fucking emo-ass lyrics coming off a band that was actually really good at putting together very intelligent lyrical concepts back in the day. But the worst part is just the insistence on song structures being, I don't know what you call it, new metal, metalcore. It's the thing where the guy goes like, he's singing all whiny, and then he goes like, like, you know, fucking gets heavy, and then goes la 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 for the chorus. Fucking terrible.
나랑 룸서비스를 영어로 시켜먹기였는데.
Oh, you think I'm exaggerating? Well, let me show you something, lady. Their highest charting single in their home country is exactly that. The Quiet Place. It's got, yeah, this is kind of a cool melodic guitar riff. Definitely not as good as an older style In Flames riff, but it's decent enough. Then you got some chugs, and then the vocals come in. Like, this is fucking terrible. But then watch. He's gonna show you. He's gonna get real heavy here. Oh, watch out, big tough guy. And then the fucking chorus.
Oh my God! Oh no, it's fails. What the hell is wrong with you, man?
Just fucking yuck. And you know who fucking agrees with me? Is original songwriter Jesper fucking Stromblad. Because he stuck around for a couple albums, was not having a good time, descended into alcoholism, left the band, went to fucking rehab. Alright? So what's a fan of In Flames' old stuff to do nowadays? The obvious answer would be just listen to the Halo Effect, because it's pretty much made up of guys that gradually left In Flames as they got shittier and shittier. And I do like the Halo Effect. It's nice to see Jesper busting out the melodies. But that band really does sound more like Dark Tranquillity than In Flames. You got those two Sacrilege albums I mentioned earlier. Those are fantastic. The guy who did fill-in work for Jesper when he was having problems, Niklas Englund, he's in the Halo Effect now, but he had a band in the 90s called Gardenian. Definitely also channel a lot of that In Flames energy in very nicely done fashion. The aforementioned Bloodstained Child had a really good development of kind of the Clayman sound, but there's one really cool little EP that I think fits in very well with the good era of In Flames, and that'd be Dimension Zero's Penetrations from the Lost World EP in 1997. Now, Dimension Zero was basically Jesper and Glenn getting out some of their more thrashy and brutal vibes that they couldn't really do with In Flames anymore. Or at least that's what was going on with that guy's full-length albums. This EP, however, even though it's made up entirely of songs that later on reappeared on the first Dimension Zero full-length, it's stylistically a lot closer to In Flames, and it has some really cool surprises for fans of particular particularly early In Flames releases. For starters, you got Jocke Gothberg, formerly of Marduk on vocals, returning from some of the In Flames demos. You've also got guest spots from Oscar Dronjak from way back in the Ceremonial Oath days. And you could definitely tell this is a more brutal project. But those harmonies kick in, and that still sounds like vintage fucking In Flames to me. Something about the way this EP is produced compared to the album version just feels a lot more In Flamesy than Dimension Zero to my ears. Speaking of which, the coolest surprise appearance ever happens in the solo department. You might remember Frederick Johansson from that awesome fucking solo on December Flower on the Jester Race. He drops a shitload of leads on this EP, and they're so fucking good. Just vintage fucking In Flames style narrative soloing. Solos that tell a story, song within a song. And then this part,
I can't stop coming.
that shit's just fucking fantastic. And then this part right here, they bring in some of that old school In Flames style narration, building up to this nasty fucking scream. Goes on for a long ass fucking time. This is some Lord Worm shit, bro. Like, dude, it's still fucking going.
Still going, this asshole.
And the riffs underneath it are brutal as fuck. Like I said, this is a project that channels Jesper's more destructive influences. But at least in this EP, there's a shitload of old school In Flames goodies. Like, yeah, what happened to In Flames is a fucking tragedy. But they've got this really impressive backlog of just sick fucking music that I've been listening to since I was basically a little kid. And I still ain't got sick of it. Hence, you know, the 3-part retrospective, which hopefully you had a good time with. But even if you didn't, thanks for listening or watching or whatever you did, and I'll see you next time.
Dumb, 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 dumb.